Here's how to use the factor theorem to find, well, factors. All right, here's the example problem that we'll be doing in this video, and I know this is a lot to look at, but let's break it down. First, we need to determine if x minus 2 is a factor of this polynomial here. Remember, a polynomial is just an equation, but without an equal sign. So we first need to figure out if x minus 2 is a factor, and then we have to find the rest of the factors if it is a factor. So to figure out if x minus 2 is a factor, we can use something called the factor theorem, which is basically just a fancy name for the rule that if you use synthetic division on this equation, so if you divide it by x minus 2, and your remainder is 0, then this is a factor. So if you don't quite remember how to do synthetic division, I have a video on it that you can watch on the card on the screen right now, but I'll also quickly go over it here. So the first thing that we need to do synthetic division is we need to take this factor, this smaller part that we're dividing by, take the number that's right here, including its sign, and then switch the sign and put it in a box. So because this is minus 2, we're going to take positive 2 and put it in a little box here. If this was x plus 2, we'd put minus 2 in the box. Then we're going to lay out the rest of the numbers, the beginning numbers in front of x, right next to the box. So this first one here, there's no number in front, which means it's 1. So we're going to put 1 here. Then we're going to put 3. Then we put not 4, negative 4, because the minus signs stay. And then negative 12. Then we're going to draw another line underneath and a line right here. And this is going to be where our remainder is. And this is the important number, because remember, this needs to be 0 according to the factor theorem. This needs to be 0 for x minus 2 to be a factor. And then I'll show you what we do next. But if this is not 0, then x minus 2 is not a factor, and we can't do anything else. The problem's over. So we're going to take this first number here, 1, and we're going to drop it down. And then we multiply and add, and multiply and add, and multiply and add. So first multiply. We multiply by what's in the box. 1 times 2 is 2. And then we add these up. So 3 plus 2 is 5. And then multiply and add. So multiply, 5 times 2 is 10. And then add minus 4 plus 10, that's the same thing as 10 minus 4, which is 6. 6 times 2 is 12, and negative 12 plus 12, again, that's the same thing as 12 minus 12, which is 0. So we have 0 here as our remainder, which means that x minus 2 is a factor. So that means that we can write this equation here, or this polynomial, we can write this as x minus 2 times something. How do we figure out what this something is? Well, actually, our clue to it is right here. If you know from doing regular synthetic division, when you're writing out your answer, this number is going to be by itself, and then you add an x, each one to the left. So 6 is by itself, 5 is going to be our x term, 1 is going to be x squared, and if you had more numbers, it would be x to the third, x to the fourth, and so on. So this is going to be 1 times x squared, or you don't have to include the 1 when it's 1. So it's just going to be x squared. Then we're going to have plus 5x plus 6. So we have successfully factored x minus 2 out. So yes, x minus 2 is a factor. So we've successfully done the first part of this problem, which is to determine if x minus 2 is a factor. It is. It's right here. But it says we also need to find the remaining factors. Now, sometimes that's just going to be it. The other factor here is x squared plus 5x plus 6. But sometimes you can actually factor this part as well. So you always need to check to see if you can factor it first. And sometimes you won't be able to, but sometimes you can. So how do we see if we can factor this? Well, if you're not familiar with factoring, I also have a video on that you can watch on the card on the screen if you want. But I'll also go over it here. Remember, you need to find two numbers that add up to the number in front of x, in this case that's 5, and then you need to multiply to the number that's by itself. In this case, that's 6. So what are two numbers that multiply to 6? Well, first of all, 1 times 6 is 6, but if you add them together, you get 1 plus 6 is 7. And 7 is not the number we're looking for. We're looking for 5. So what other numbers multiply to 6? Well, 2 times 3 is 6, and if you add them together, you get 5. Which is the number we're looking for. So 2 and 3 are our numbers. And remember that your two numbers that you get from factoring, you put them in parentheses with x. And if these were negative numbers, we would put x minus the numbers. But since they're both positive, we're going to put plus 2 and plus 3. So this is the factored form of x squared plus 5x plus 6. But remember that this x minus 2 is still here. That hasn't changed. So we're going to put that at the beginning still. And there we go. We have found the remaining factors of x to the third plus 3x squared minus 4x minus 12. And if you weren't sure if you were right, you can check your work by multiplying these together, and you should end up coming back to this big long thing. So yeah, it turns out synthetic division has a lot of uses other than just dividing. You can use it to factor pretty big polynomials. But that's not the only way to factor. There are so many other kinds of factoring and ways to do it. So if you want to learn the 5 main ways to factor, you can watch this video right here. And as always, if you have any questions about this video, go ahead and leave it in the comments and I'll be sure to answer your question. Thanks for watching.